In today's video, I'll show you how to identify triads in less than 5 minutes and then give you a longer explanation in less than 15 if you need to see some more of the details. So, first of all, here's the quick version. When I look at the notes of a triad on the line of fifths, they show 4 distinctive patterns that make it easy to identify the root and the modality of the chord. That is, we'll see major, minor, diminished, and augmented, all showing a different pattern. So let's look at C major, C minor, C diminished, and C augmented as examples. On the line of fifths, a major chord will show the root and fifth as neighbors, right and left, with the major third over to the right. So in this case, C is the root, G is the perfect fifth above, and then E is to the right, indicating a major third, and thus a C major chord. Remember, it's the third that determines the modality of a major or minor chord. I can move this diagram to any note on the line and see what notes make up a major triad. A minor chord looks similar because of the perfect fifth between the root and the fifth of the chord. And then the third, in this case an E flat, is over to the left of the root. This diagram can also be moved anywhere and give the correct spellings for any minor chord. A diminished chord follows a different pattern, but is very easy to spot. Here is C diminished, a stack of minor thirds, C, E flat, G flat. On the line of fifths, it shows up as 3 notes, each separated by 2. The root is always here, with a third and diminished fifth in the line to the left. Remember that minor and diminished intervals are always to the left. An augmented chord looks somewhat like a diminished chord, but the notes now have 3 between them, so that the root is here, and then the other 2 notes are off to the right. If you forget which is augmented and which is diminished, just remember that augmented means greater or bigger, and that the notes of a diminished triad span 7 notes, while those of an augmented triad span 9. So that's the quick version. If you need a little more information, a little more detail, here follows a longer explanation with more examples. In my first video, I showed you how to create a line of fifths by stretching out the circle of fifths, or more properly the spiral of fifths, into a straight line that extends infinitely in 2 directions. In the second video, I showed you how to measure intervals, and now I'm going to show you how to use that line to determine the name of any triad reliably and quickly. I'm going to assume that you have passing familiarity with the terms root position, first inversion, and second inversion. But if you don't, watch anyway. I'll explain them briefly, but then you might need to go back and look up more information that you might need to understand those a little better. So on to the subject. Traditional triads are stacks of 3 notes that are a third apart. I may refer to these as chords or harmonies, but for now I mean the same thing. These triads are called tertian harmonies because they are constructed of thirds. They are named by the lowest note in the stack, which we call the root. So for example, this is called a C chord because it has a C in what we call the root position, with the E as the third and the G a fifth above it. I can invert this chord by placing the third in the lowest position, and this is called a first inversion chord. I can also place the fifth of the chord in the lowest position, and I have a second inversion chord. There's plenty of information out there for you to help you learn more about these, but for my purpose, I just want to help you name these harmonies and construct them quickly. Much like intervals, triads have modality, but just 4 of them, not 5, so major, minor, diminished, and augmented. The modality of a chord is determined by the size of the third and the size of the fifth that's above the root. A major chord has a major third above the root and a perfect fifth. A minor chord has a minor third and also a perfect fifth over the root. A diminished chord has a minor third and a diminished fifth over the root, and hence the name. An augmented chord has a major third and an augmented fifth over the root. Phew, that is a lot to memorize and a lot of intervals to measure. It isn't too bad if the triad you're given is in root position, but if it is an inversion, then the third or the fifth of the chord are going to look a little different, so this can get a little tricky. Well, with the line of fifths, you have a simple way to identify the root and modality of any of these triads in any inversion. And here are the steps. There are 4 at most. Step 1. When you are given a chord to identify, do a note inventory on a line of fifths. For example, G, B, D. Step 2. Identify the root. Notice that the root and the fifth of the chord are right next to each other, and the root is the one that's on the left, in this case, G. Whenever you see 2 notes neighboring like this, the root is always the one on the left. Step 3. Look at the relative position of the third to the other 2 notes. If the third of the triad is to the right, that indicates a major third over the root, and thus it names the chord. The modality of the chord is a major chord. So this one is G major, which is written this way. No M is used, just capital G. If the third of the triad is to the left, however, then you have a minor chord. It's a minor third over the root and thus a minor triad. And so let me change this B to a B flat, and now we have a minor chord, or G minor in this case, written this way, G with a small m. So major and minor triads are easy to spot on the line of fifths. You can always draw lines if you want for yourself, just from the root to the third to the fifth, and you can see the relative positions very clearly. If the root is in the lowest position of the given notes, then you're done. 3 steps. If not, then step 4 is to write a slash and indicate what the bass note is. If you are in an advanced theory class, then you'll need to know which inversion. If it's the third of the chord, it's first inversion. If it's the fifth of the chord that's in the lowest position, then you have a second inversion harmony. You may have some extra notation to include when analyzing a passage of music, but now you'll be sure to know what harmony it is that you're dealing with. See my video on Roman numeral analysis to see how to handle that for a passage of music in a given key. So let's do some examples. Here are 4 examples of major and minor triads and how they look on the line of fifths. F, A flat, C. Step 1, inventory the notes. Step 2, identify the root. It's the left of the 2 neighboring notes. That's the first symbol in our triad name, the root. Step 3, here's the third, over to the left. So this is a minor triad, F minor. Done. Example 2 of my 4. Here is a chord in an inversion, D flat, G flat, B flat. You can see that they're not exactly all stacked thirds, right? We've got a 4th here. Well, step 1, inventory the notes. Step 2, identify the root. Here it is to the left of these 2 neighboring notes. Step 3, here is the third over to the right. So this is a major chord. That's right, it's a major third over the root. I have a major chord, G flat major, because I know that's the root. Since G flat is not the lowest note, I need step 4. Step 4, add a slash, and then indicate what that lowest note is, in this case, D flat. This is the 5th of the chord, so this is in second inversion. Example 3 of 4, F, A, D. Step 1, inventory the notes. Step 2, here's the root. Step 3, here's the third over to the left. It's a minor third over the root, so I have a minor chord, which may be familiar to you, D minor. Step 4, I add slash F to the chord name because that's the lowest of my given notes. It's in first inversion, and now I'm done. One last example, using some notes that are maybe less familiar to you, F sharp, A sharp, and D sharp. Step 1, inventory the notes. Step 2, here's the root. Step 3, here's the third over to the left. It is a minor third over the root, so I have a minor chord, in this case, D sharp minor. Step 4, I add slash F sharp to the chord name, and I'm done there. Since this is the third of the chord that's in the bass, it's in first inversion. I purposely used a less familiar chord so that you can see that the process works for any combination of notes, no matter where they lie on the line of fifths. They'll always have the same relation to one another. So what about diminished and augmented chords? Well, surprisingly, these are even easier to spot and actually require one fewer steps to identify or construct. So I'll go straight to an example. B, D, F. Since there aren't two neighboring notes, you have to decide, is it diminished or augmented? You'll see the obvious difference in a hot second. When the notes fit into 7 total positions, the root is here on the right. If you think about it, you can see that the perfect fifth is just to the right, that F sharp. And the diminished version of that using that same letter name F is displaced over here. So the root is on the right, B. The two notes both to the left of B mean a diminished chord. Remember, the diminished chord is a stack of 2 minor thirds, and so you can see that reflected in the line of fifths diagram of a diminished triad. Here's one example of an inverted diminished chord, F sharp, A, and D sharp. Step 1, inventory. Step 2, here's the root. Both notes are over the root minor thirds away like so. The chord is D sharp diminished, but the lowest of the given notes isn't D sharp, which is the root. So step 4, add slash F sharp. I'm sorry, that was step 3, wasn't it? Step 3, add slash F sharp. That is the third of the chord, and in this case, between the two notes on the line of fifths, conveniently. And so it's in first inversion. Lastly, an augmented chord. An augmented chord looks different on the line of fifths because it lies outside of a major key. And so it lies outside of the 7 positions on the line of fifths that identify the notes in a major key. The root will be the leftmost note in this case. The third will be, fortunately, conveniently, in the middle, and then the augmented fifth off to the right, 9 positions. Here are 2 examples, G, B, D sharp. Step 1, inventory. Step 2, aha, 9 positions. I don't even have to think about it. Here's the root, G, and it's G augmented. Done. Here's a second example, C, E, A flat. Step 1, inventory. Step 2, aha, 9 positions. So here's the root of the augmented chord, A flat. Now I need step 3 because A flat isn't the lowest given note, C is. And so I add a slash and a C, and I'm done. Because C is the third of this chord, then I know it's in first inversion because that third of the chord is in the lowest position. So that is a quick and reliable way to identify major, minor, diminished, and augmented triads. What about if you are asked to construct a triad, given a chord symbol? Well, you can do that quickly now too, and to spell the chord correctly. Here are some examples in root position. Do the inventory of notes on the line of fifths that you'll need first, and then write the root position chord. So you're given C minor. I need C and E and G, and I just have to figure out how to spell the other notes. I've got the C already, that's the root that's given to me. And I need the E that's to the left, so that's E flat, and then a G, of course, is right next to it. That's C minor. For G sharp major, all right, I need G sharp and D sharp. G sharp is the root, D sharp is right next to it, it's a perfect fifth, and then the middle note, B. I need major, so I need the B that is to the right of these, and so that's B sharp. That's the right spelling, not C natural. How about F diminished? I'm given that chord to write out, so I need F, I need A flat, and I need C flat. That is the correct spelling, since the relative positions of these notes will always be the same. How about D augmented? All right, writing the 3 notes. I need these 3 notes with this formation on the line of fifths. The D, the F that is to the right, F sharp, and then the A to the right of that, A sharp. So A sharp, not B flat. To create inversions of any of these chords, you just place the third of those harmonies in the lowest position for first inversion, and for second inversion, you place the 5th in the lowest position. So there you have it, major, minor, diminished, and augmented chords identified by the line of fifths to either identify or to construct. So I hope that's helpful. See you in the next video.